much. Again, Robert Rogers here on behalf of County Supervisor John Gioia. Thanks again, Mayor, for your deeply researched and justice-informed commentary on this issue and on the background. I want to start by saying, on behalf of Supervisor Gioia again, that we've really been glad to participate in this process with the city, with community groups in North Richmond. It's been a lengthy, laborious, open, and very kind of copacetic process that's really been helped by the community and by city staff. Thanks in particular to the city for showing leadership on this issue, being willing to take a very thorny issue, very difficult, and potentially take on a bit of a fiscal burden as well. Having that kind of view and having that kind of leadership is much appreciated as well. It's important to note, as the mayor did, regardless of your decision tonight, or I should say if you choose to move forward with the annexation process, the community voice still remains supreme here. There's still an opportunity for the community to weigh in, to reject the process, and they've been deeply engaged in a series of community meetings, and presumably that would continue if you chose to go forward with this next hurdle in the process. It's a lengthy process, it's a hard process, but it's good because it ensures continual community engagement, that the community's voice is always taken as a priority, as the number one. Ultimately, if the community doesn't want this, a majority of the community, then it just won't happen. It may go without saying, but I should say it, Supervisor Gioia has been proud to represent this community for decades and will continue to do so regardless of what happens. If the city takes on this burden of providing the municipal services in North Richmond that probably should have been provided there since the genesis of this community, Supervisor Gioia will still be the representative at the county level in North Richmond, and will still have just as much love and energy and office space and office energy devoted towards this community, regardless of whether it's in the city or not. That said, there are three main issues that we've gone over, but I'll just reiterate briefly that lend credence to the idea that annexation may improve community services in North Richmond and restore historic wrongs that never should have been. Foremost is public safety contiguity. The chief alluded to Chris Magnus' statements before he left as chief. As we know, when we have an issue that is a community that's a dense urban environment with real poverty and crime challenges, that is not an ideal situation to have deputy sheriffs out patrolling without the full suite of services that are offered by municipal police department, without the intensive detective bureaus, the interdiction, the preventative work, and so forth. That kind of a public safety model hasn't worked in North Richmond, and it has, it has contributed to an astoundingly high crime rates over the decades in North Richmond, and the inability to seamlessly interdict crime, especially as it's related to the surrounding community in North Richmond that has a different department with jurisdiction over it. It'll also portend better community or greater community engagement and political representation. North Richmond comprises less than 1/3 of 1% of West County voters, and if it were to be part of the city of Richmond, it would be better than 3%. That's a significant difference. Community leadership, city leaders could emerge from North Richmond, maybe sit on a council with you one day, and so forth, right? There's a lot of talent, there's a lot of engagement in North Richmond, but it's been excluded from city processes by this arbitrary political boundary over time. And then lastly, it will definitely lend itself to better contiguity in terms of your own planning processes, your own land use processes, your own development. You have a fantastic development plan that you developed in the city over several years, and North Richmond would fall under the purview of that. And so you would have this more seamless connection with a pocket of land that is completely surrounded by your city, with the kind of development that you've worked with your community in order to make happen over the decades to come. If you have this area that falls within that purview, that'll give you better, more seamless continuity with your own planning processes. Lastly, I will go back to the public safety thing, and I will speak a little bit on a personal level. Prior to coming to Supervisor Gioia's office, as Mayor Budd alluded to, I worked in journalism, and I did a thesis project on North Richmond several years ago. During that time, I had the opportunity to befriend and have really valuable relationships with many young men. Some names that come to mind right away are like those of Orlando Yancey and Irvin Coley and Earl Hamilton. And I knew these young men, I knew these families, and they were cut down by gang violence in North Richmond. And as you know, in North Richmond, violence is not contained just within that community. The violence is a back and forth. It's a volley between areas in the city of Richmond and North Richmond. And these young men lost their lives. And we lost a lot of talent, and there was heartbreaking tragedies within their own families, within their communities. Those who killed them were never brought to justice. We weren't able to ensure that there weren't further loss of life after that. The entire process of investigating and preventing and working with youth, all of that is interrupted by the division of jurisdictional lines. It's made more difficult. It's made less effective. So do I think that over time the community can be safer, the lives can be saved if North Richmond is part of the city? Yes, I do believe that. And I'll leave it there, and I'm here to answer questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councilman Meyer.
Thank you for this presentation. So, a number of questions I have. First and most important, first let me just say this. I believe in One Richmond, and I believe that the goal should be figuring out how to get there. That said, I also believe in self-determination for the community. So, I know that this process includes a